Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to G Bear's Off-Grid Ways, a homestead in the desert. And here we are on August 21st, I think it is. I'll post it in the title to make sure that I do get the right date on there. Anyway, I was asked to show how to rescreen. So that is going to be the first part of this video. I've already done one screen and replaced it, and then I set up for the next one. And I'm going to start off here by telling you there's a few tools that you should have. An old paintbrush, I like to keep one of those around. It's great for cleaning dust out of the grooves after you take the screen apart. And also out of the grooves where the screen fits into the window, because dirt and dust will trap between those and you can't get to them with anything else. So once you got them out, good time to clean them. All right, next is, I like this little pick here. It's got one angled end on it and one straight end on it. And I got this at Harbor Freight. It comes in a 2-pack. The other one's got like a curled end on this end and a straight end on the other. But yeah, either one will work for you. If you don't have one of those, you can just use a regular awl. This is a straight pick awl. That'll also work, but you want a nice sharp one, not a real dull one. This also comes in handy when you're putting the spline back in on the screen. Sometimes when you get into the corners, your splining tool won't fit in the corner because it's round and the corner's square. So you're not going to get it all the way into the corner. So you need to have something to push that spline down in the corners, okay? Now, talking about a splining tool. Okay, there's 2 wheels on a splining tool. You got two wheels, one on each end. Now this side, if you'll notice, let me see if I can get that into focus, is just a rounded over piece. This one is hollow ground. It's got a little concave section on it. All right. This is the one you would most likely always be using because not too many people use metal screen anymore, although some people with pets do. And that's what this one's for, is when you have metal screen and you need to get it down into this spline groove, it doesn't press down very easily all at once with the grooved side like it does with vinyl screen. The metal screen is a little too rigid. So what you do is you use this side first to just press the screen down into the channel before you put your spline in with the other side. Okay, so I hope that's explained. Next is you want a good box cutter or a razor knife, one or the other. This is the one I always carry in my pocket everywhere I go, and it's always been the handiest tool I've ever had because I don't have to sharpen blades, I just replace them. And I like this kind because it has the flip up here, and then this part flips down, and then you change the blade. You can flip it over. So you got 2 sides to a blade. One side dulls out. You don't have to run and get another blade right away. You just flip the blade and keep on going. But I do like this kind better because some of them have a push button on the top here that you press down on to release the blade. Well, that's right where you put your thumb when you're applying pressure to cutting drywall or something like that. And then you press down and all of a sudden the blade pulls out. And I've cut myself on the knuckle there a couple of times with that happening, as the blade comes out and flips on you and gives you a nice little cut. So I don't like those kind. I like this one. And this one is patented. This one's by Craftsman. Although years ago, I bought a couple of this style from Harbor Freight, but they don't sell them anymore. So I guess they got nailed for a patent violation. But this is the kind that I always buy. I think Husky used to make this style also. But if you have one of these, hang on to it because I understand that all the Sears are starting to close now, so you're not going to be able to get good Craftsman tools anymore. Or you still might, but you're not going to get good ones anymore. So this is a nice heavy duty one, and I really like it. All right, moving on. You might need a pencil. Always have one whenever you're working. A stapler, okay? This is what you might use and you might not use, and I'll explain that in a minute. Some screws maybe, and a couple of paint sticks. Okay, now these are the little 1 gallon or 1 quart paint sticks. You might want to get a couple of 5-gallon ones too if you're working with bigger screens. And you can see the screen that I'm working with on my motorhome are not that big. But what you're going to use these for, and let me bring this up a little bit. All right, so the longer run on the screen, this longer run here, this one's not too bad because it's not that long. But if you've got bigger screens like for your house and they've got a good 3-foot or 4-foot run along one side, what happens is when you're putting the screen in and you're splining it on the two sides, is the two sides want to pull in together. So you end up with bowed sides. Well, to prevent that, what you would do, and let me get my good screen out of the way. What you would do is start by taking your razor knife and let me see if that's in screen. Yeah, right about there should show you. So what you're going to do is right about center of the run across this side is up close against the aluminum and make a little slot, probably 3 or 4 inches long. Okay? Just so you get your pencil in there. Then you're going to get your pencil in there and draw on your table or working on a piece of plywood, because you do want to have a nice flat surface for doing this. And this plywood table works great for me because I've had it for a long time, so it works great. But if you have a good table you don't want to damage, get yourself a sheet of plywood and lay it on top of that table, and then you can still do this kind of thing, okay? So I made my cut here and I made my mark. Now I'm going to do the same thing, or I would do the same thing on the other side on the long run, so that I have 2 marks on my plywood or on my table. And what are those for? Well, can you see that mark right there? What I'm going to do is take one of the paint sticks and lay it right up against that. And then I would take my stapler and staple that down with a couple of staples so it won't move. And then I would take my other paint stick and put it on the other line on the other side and do the same thing. And the reason you do that is so that when you put your screen back down, you set it over that piece right there. And now when you're splining, the two sides can't come together. It holds them apart. Okay, so that makes it a little easier for people that are first timers. I bet you somebody some time or other had tried rescreening themselves and they got bows in the sides of their screen here. It bowed in, and when they put it in they go, oh my god, it's not square anymore. Well, that's the reason. All right, so what are the screws for? Well, sometimes you have a very large screen and you would want to use a 5-gallon stick. These are an 1/8-inch stick. The 5-gallon sticks are like a 3/16 to a 1/4-inch stick. And these work great for these smaller screens, but for a larger screen, it might jump over this every time you're working. So you want to use a heavier stick. So you drill 2 holes in there and then use screws to anchor it down instead of staples. All right? All right, so we got that. So let's get to the other stuff. Another tool you would want to have, and I got to do this the hard way with my tripod, is a bucket or a trash can for your waste. So you don't have that all over the place getting in your way. All right, you see in the back there, I have a large piece of screen, a big roll of screen. That's a commercial roll. You probably would never get one of those. You'd never have a use for all of that. You'll go to one of the box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, or Ace Hardware, or whatever, and you buy a screen kit. And a lot of the screen kit come with the metal frame, or you can just buy the screen and a spline together. And it's nice to replace the splines. Now there are different size splines. So if you are going to do that, take the spline out of your original one and bring it in with you so somebody in the store can help you get the right size spline. Because if you have the small spline and you go to the store and buy the big spline, when you get back, you're going to be very disappointed because there ain't no way you're getting it in there. And vice versa. If you have the big spline and you come home with the small spline brand new, it's not going to hold your screen in place. The screen's going to keep popping out. So make sure you take a sample of your old spline with you when you go into the store so you know what size to get. Also, if you can, bring a piece of your screen, because if you want to match color to the rest of your house, you want to make sure you get the same color screen. All right. I use this gray screen for everything because I just like the gray screen. I don't like the charcoal, although some people do. I don't like the white screen because they get dirty too quickly. So forth, so on. All right, so now that we got the materials set to one side here, let's get the camera in a little closer here so you can see what I'm doing. All right, now, first thing you're going to do, we don't need the stick under there, and the screws, I can get those out of the way. First thing you're going to do is you're going to check your four corners, because that's normally where the spline begins and ends. All right, so I already checked this one, and I saw that it was this corner where it started and ended. So you're going to go in with your point tool and grab a hold of the spline and lift it out of there. Okay, once you got a hold of the spline, you can pull it out. Be careful at the corners, especially if you're going to be reusing the same spline. And I like to keep my spline kind of like oriented to the way I took it off, so that I can put it back in the same way. And trust me, when you're putting it back together, you will never end up using the same exact amount of spline. Your spline's going to seem like it's suddenly grew and got longer on you. And that's because your splining tool does stretch the spline as it's putting it down inside. So just remember that, so you don't go, hey, how come all of a sudden I took this out and it was perfect size and now it's too long? All right, so now you can get your old screen out of there and then get that out of the way, fold it up and drop it in the trash bucket below. So that's out of the way. All right. So over there, you can see I laid my spline down basically in the same orientation. I took it out and I just set the screen metal back in the same orientation of where I took it apart. So now I'm going to take a piece of my screen here and lay it out on the table. And there might be a little dirt on it. Don't worry, you can brush that off later. All right, so now you're going to take your screen frame and put it under the screen, leaving anywhere from 3/4 to 1 inch overhang on at least 2 of the sides, like that. Okay? Now, the reason that there's a piece cut off over on that end of this big roll is because I just did the other screen that was the same size as this off of that one over there. All right, so we're ready to start resplining. So like I said, I had this oriented to the same way it came off. All right, so what we're going to do is start, let me see if that's in frame, nope. We're going to start our spline in the corner right where we started taking it out from. And then we're going to use our splining tool with the hollow ground wheel on it and press it down into place right there. And like I said, sometimes that corner right there won't go down because you got a round tool. So I just use my awl to press that down the rest of the way into the corner. Make sure I got a nice anchor there. All right. Next is, you're going to try to make sure that your screen stays as straight as possible align your spline over a long distance there and hold it with your hand, and take your splining tool and start it where you've got it countersunk, and you're going to see how it's tilted the same direction that I'm going. You're going to slowly roll down the line and make sure you get a good seating on that spline. Okay? And you're going to do that all the way down this one side, stopping and resetting your spline as needed to keep it aligned with where you're going. Now, here's what I was talking about. You see on the corner, you can see the bend in the spline now is a 1/2 inch past where it started before. Well, like I said, this thing does stretch as you're rolling it into place, and there's nothing you can do about that. So that's why using new spline usually is the best idea. And this is like 1/8 inch spline. So it's a custom spline. I don't even think you can buy that in the big box store. This is for campers. So what I've got to do is I've got to work this corner over here. Let me see if I can get that into where I'm going to work. And what I'm going to do is make sure that my screen stays tight. And with a big roll, it's nice because you can pull on this side of the screen and let the weight of the roll help stretch the screen for you. So I'm going to go around the corner here, and then I'm going to use my awl to get that started down in the corner, like that. So I'm ready to go down the next run. Okay, so you're going to take your spline and align it as best you can, hold it in place, take your splining tool, tilt it in the direction you're going, and roll your spline in. All right. And just make sure we got that next corner in screen there. All right, so now this is where you really want to make sure that you tug it and snug it. Okay, so you're going to pull on just a little bit of an angle. Now, if you had blocks in here, you wouldn't have to do this because the frame isn't going to move on you. You would move the roll of screen to tighten it up. Those two pieces would anchor this screen frame in place. All right, now I've got 1 inch left over here from where it extended and stretched a little bit. So I'm going to go in the corner here, and I'm going to start by pressing down my corner and getting it anchored. All right, now I'm going to get my spline aligned like I did on the other two sides, and start with my roller. And if you have a bend in the spline like this one has, you might try to just push that down straight with your roller rather than try to roll over it, because you could slip off of it and these edges would end up cutting your new screen. We don't want that. Okay, so we're ready to go here. We're going to take this and go up there, and you can see the screen is kind of pulling itself tight as I'm doing this. All right, now the screen is nice and tight on here, and I'm just going to do the last corner here. Again, I gained another 1/2 inch. All right, now I'm going to take the last one and bring it all the way back to home where I started, and I'm going to make sure that that's pressed down in there nice and snug. Okay, now You saw me going back and forth. If you're going to do that, make sure you keep a firm pressure on it, and make sure you keep your eye on your line so you're going straight, because if you jump out of there and you hit this edge right here on the inner edge, you can cut the screen and you just wasted all that time. You got to start over. All right, so now I got my leftover here, which is about 2 inches long. I gained a 1/2 inch per side. So I'm going to cut that off with my razor knife and finish pressing down that corner with my awl. All right, so now we got the screen in. So now we got to cut the excess. So you're going to take your knife and start it right in the corner here on the outside part of the spline, and get a little start going there, and then separate the screen so that it's ready to come apart. Okay, so now we're just going to take this, and let me adjust the camera here, and we're just going to run right along that spline, being sure that you don't cut into the screen on the other side or cut into the spline at all. And you're just going to do that all the way around. Just like that. These corners, sometimes you get one little strand in the corner that won't come up. Always use your knife to cut away from the new screen. Because if you go the other way and slip, zip, there goes all of your work. Start over. All right. So, one more little strand on that corner. And there is the finished screen, all rescreened. All right, now if you wanted to, you could take this over to your garden hose and hose it off. I usually just take a brush and brush it off like this. And a nice soft bristled paintbrush works great for this. And that's it. And the one other thing to remember is the spline always goes on the inside of the window, not to the outside, because if it was on the outside, anybody could come along, find that little corner, pull the trim out, take the screen out as quiet as can be, and they're through your screen. Of course, screens aren't made for security anyway, but it just helps like a lock. It keeps honest people honest. That's the whole secret to security, is you're not going to have a problem with honest people, and dishonest people are only slowed down by your security measures. All right, everybody, that's it for today. I'm going to cut this one off and finish up all the rest of my screens and get them all in. And on the next video, I'll do a walk around the motorhome and show you what it looks like. G-Bear, signing off.